Hello and welcome to today's second webinar. Thank you very much for taking time out and being here again at 2 o'clock. And my name is Ayong. I am the Marketing and Educational Seminar Coordinator here at NeoBiotech. And this is me right here. So today's topic is how do you like your implant stability with Dr. Spencer Park. And here I will go over some agenda. It's very simple. So first one is I already introduced the topic and then the presenter. And the second one will be, I will announce a special promotion at the end of the webinar. And the third one, I will also announce about the upcoming and previous webinars. And lastly, I will go over how to receive your CE credits. And also, we are strongly recommended to use the chat box during this webinar if you have any technical issues and other than the topic. And we will have a Q&A session at the end. So please submit your questions through this Q&A box right here. And Dr. Park will answer your questions. So let's have Dr. Park to start this afternoon's webinar. Good afternoon, Dr. Park. How are you doing?
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Great. How are you? Good, very nice. Let me start my video streaming. Ayon, could you allow? All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Hayong, for your great introduction. Hello, doctors, and hello, everyone. Thanks for joining NeoBiotech webinar, and then I hope everybody's doing okay and fine, and then stay healthy and stay in peace as much as possible. So let me start the webinar lecture, and then let me share the slide altogether. Right, today we're going to discuss about implant stability. So my title is, how do you like your implant stability? Well, the main reason that I picked this title is depend on the individual. Somebody using the torque and then different number of the torque, somebody using the different machine ISQ or Anycheck or even Periotest. But there's not really a general consensus and based on the scientific evidence on what we need to do in the clinical situation. So today I'd like to discuss with you about those implant stability. So I used to teach in UCLA prosthodontic department, and then I recently left the school, and now I'm working for the NeoBiotech and then also Ray America as a consultant and also the director of the GAO. So when to load a dental implant, that is the most important question for the clinician like us, right? The determining factor of the dental implant loading timing is first one is what patient need. And patient one, compliance, occlusion, medical dental history, of course. And also soft tissue wise, make sure the soft tissue around the implant is healed and maturated. And also hard tissue such as a bone. So the bone must be healed and also remodeling and also integration done properly. And also in clinic, the implant stability is also a great issue for us to determine the implant, the loading. Those implant stability, we're going to discuss about it today. Based on the JPD, their definition of the implant stability is the characteristic endure the force on the implant. And also they pointed out that primary stability, their definition is a mechanical stabilization. Then let's look at the AAID, their definition. Their definition is an absence of clinically detectable implant mobility. Well, we are talking about the implant stability, but the definition itself, they talk about the implant mobility. Well, the truth is to measure the implant stability, that means we have to measure the implant mobility. In other words, high implant stability means that low implant mobility. High implant mobility means that low implant stability. So we are measuring the same thing, but we're looking at the opposite directions. So let's talk about the implant mobility or stability together. In clinical situation, we can face those mobility like vertical mobility, and also those lateral mobility, and also those tilting mobility, and also those rotational mobility. So my humble definition for the implant stability is the absence of the fixture mobility under the physiological force from mastication. In other words, once I place those implant and I put some crown on it and then patient begin to chew, but during the chewing, I do not want to see any mobility such as those, right? So I want to achieve those, the stability, and I want to maintain those stability. That's the goal. Let's look at our conventional, the stability, the graph. This is a very famous one. As you can see over here, we start with the primary stability that determined by the osteoclast activities, right? We start with a high number, but we are decreasing. And also we have a secondary stability over here that was determined pretty much by the osteoblast activity and then bone maturation, bone remodeling. Those two going to end up total stability, as you can see. So when I was a resident, because we have those deep, whether osteoclast activities increase, but osteoblast activities didn't follow yet, then those 2 to 5, 2 to 6 weeks is we call implant stability dip, and also we call dangerous zone. So my professor told me that do not touch your implant during that time. So in other words, stability dip means that actually mobility bump, right? Then why we have those stability dip? There's a many reasons, of course, but one of the reasons that I want to point out is this. Conventional and then also pre-tapping method. Here, so far, we are using the countersink or conventional ways. As you can see over here, those areas basically stress is concentrated. Once those bone under the lot of stress, they're gonna call the osteoclast to relieve those stress. Those stress concentration cause a high possibility of the rapid and large amount of osteolytic bone remodeling due to the higher stress. So if we do the pre-tapping or CMA fixation concept with the new biotech, then we can minimize those problems as much as possible. And also from the osteoblast point of view, as you can see over here, all those areas, osteoblasts need to build up again and maturate it. So excessive amount of the bone damage or loss resulting large amount of the new bone formation and maturation. So if we do the pre-tapping situation, the method, then we can minimize those new bone formation maturation. So hopefully the healing time going to be shortened. Well, that is about just why we have those stability dip depend on based on the osteoblast and osteoclast activity. Of course, there's an infection and loading, overloading, the other factors too. So in terms of implant stability measuring method, based on 2010 article, we have some invasive method and we have a non-invasive method. First one is tensional. We push the implant laterally until it fractured out, or push out. Or place the implant and then push out the implant while pull out, and or we can reverse to apply the reverse torque until it's fractured up, right? And also we can use a band that is a value of actual micromotion. I'm going to explain to you later. The non-invasive way or non-destructive method, we have a sound. So when I was a resident, my professor told me that using the intraoral mirror tail and then tapping those implant healing abutment, then I can hear the sound. And based on the sound, I can say my implant is good or bad. But to be honest with you, I even cannot tell my watermelon is good or bad by tapping it. But some doctors can use a sound. And insertion torque, right? That is another non-invasive. And also, if we apply the small amount of the reverse torque, that is also can be non-invasive way. And also we have a damping capacity analysis, and also we have a resonant frequency analysis method too. So let's go a little bit more detail. So let me share one of the experimental way to using those implant stability measuring. First one is pushing out. So stability means the mobility, measuring the mobility means the degree of the osseointegration. That means about the break point in terms of those in vitro, in vivo method. So I created those mini implant, 0.6 millimeter diameter, and then I placed those in the mouse femur right here. This is the clinical pictures, and those are X-ray. So once 1 to 6 weeks later, then I cut those the bone, and then I pushing out this implant. When I pushing out one point, there gonna be no more forces needed. That means fracture point. Then I can tell the strength, the bonding strength between this implant and then bone. So this is how we are using the pushing out test to measure the implant stability or the degree of osseointegration. So over here, as you can see, machined surface and SLA surface, 3 to 4 weeks, definitely we can see higher pushing out value in SLA surface. So again, rough surface is better than smooth surface, as we all know. And this is a diagram of the value of the actual micromotion over here. We have a little implant here, and then we have a hammer over here. And then that implant, there is a laser beam on top of the implant, next to the implant, and once the hammer is bang the implant is begin to move, and then it going to the recorded how those implants move. So this is, we consider this is one of the most accurate way to measure the actual implant movement. However, we cannot use this method for the intraorally. Only the in vitro is possible for this case. Then let's talk about the non-invasive method for clinic. The method that we can use in our clinic. First one is insertion torque. Well, so in this case, as you can see, I'm using the digital insertion torque measuring machine over here. So it measures the highest, highest torque of those the implant. Right? So insertion torque and seating torque or final torque, all those things, slightly different terminology definition. However, in this we are using those insertion torque as the highest, the number of the torque during the implant insertion. Well, in terms of the torque, there was quite a controversy about the compression necrosis, as we all know. 2009, Michigan group published one case report that the implant was, the bone around the implant was gone in 2 to 4 weeks without any loading or infection. And they pointed out the possibility of the compression necrosis. So after then, all the company and then implantologists, they are worried about it. And then we always talk to that no more than 50 Newton, no more than 40 Newton centimeter, right? Because we are worried about the over torque or compression necrosis. However, there's another group, 2011, they published that they shows that even high torque, they don't see any compression necrosis of bone loss around those implants. So still they are quite debating whether actually there is a compression necrosis or not. However, the way I look at it is this. I published this is a 2000, I presented this is 2016 IADL, and then if we are pushing the hard bone, then more than 40 Newton centimeter in dense bone, like cortical bone, hard bone layer, possible compression necrosis or excessive bone remodeling. Because if we push the hard bone, they're going to call the osteoclast, and then they're going to activate really quickly. However, if we get the torque from the soft bone area by compaction, not by compression, and then I believe we have a less osteoclast activity, they're going to ended up that a little bit more allowable and forgivable torque over there. So over torque, the number is important. However, also the location where you get those torque is also important. So for example, over here, let's look at the center one. This is my experiment, and I'm using the 1.5 millimeter cortical layer sample. So I placed a 4x10 implant. But as you can see over here, I control that the drilling size, osteotomy size from 3.0 to 4.0. And as you can see over here, even though I increase the osteotomy size from 3.0 to 3.5, the torque itself is very similar. However, when I did the tapping, then the torque is decreased significantly. Whenever you have a hard bone layer or dense bone or cortical bone layer, keep in mind, your tapping procedure basically determines the torque. So I just want to point out the importance of the pre-tapping in terms of the control your implant torque, insertion torque. So now let me share my friend's case, right? He placed those implant, and then from the very beginning, he aimed for the immediate loading. So what he told me that he placed those two implants, and then when he placed it, it was about 60 Newton, 50 Newton. So what he did is he counterclockwise a couple of times, back and forth, and it ended up putting the implant. Final torque is about 40 Newton, right? That's what he claimed. So those two implants is 40 Newtons. And then about 10 days later, patient complained a little bit of the dull pain. And about another 10 days later, you can see significant bone loss. And about a month, and then you can see the huge bone is gone. So I believe this is one of the very typical X-ray radiograph image of the compression necrosis, right? And how about this? So this case, also my friend placed this implant, and then when about 2 weeks later, you can see the big bone loss around here. So maybe this is possibly overloading or occlusion issue. But one thing that I want to point out is this. Let's look at the bone density. This is a root, and this is a dentin, and this is a bone. As you can see, based on the PA, those two areas have the same brightness. That means the bone over here is quite dense, right? So that is one thing that I want to point out. So whenever you're dealing with a hard bone, be careful. And then we have a high possibility of the compression necrosis or rapid bone remodeling by giving a stress on our hard bone areas, right? This is another example, right? Bone is quite dense, and then the dentist placed the implant, and then you can see even before the loading, you see a lot of the bone loose around those implants, right? So now let's move on for the resonant frequency analysis. So we are using the Ostell or Penguin. So it sounds very complicated and fancy, resonant frequency analysis, but basically this machine put some smart pack on top of the implant, and then this machine give a magnetic force. Once the magnetic force hit those implant and implant it vibrate, the vibrating implant creates some frequency, and this machine capture the frequency and convert into their value of the ISQ, implant stability values right here. So let me share those video clips. So as you can see, when I hit my wine glass with a spoon, you can hear the sound. But actually, by hitting my wine glass, I create the vibration my wine glass, and then when my wine glass is vibrated, and then it creates the frequencies, right? That is how those resonant frequency analysis works. So basically, we measure how much it vibrates. If it vibrates too much, maybe low stability. If it vibrates little, then high stability. So this I try to mimic the clinical situation. In this case, implant placed in not a great way. So as you can see, half of the implant is in the bone. As you can see over here, the other half is on the air. So in other words, this implant has a vertical defect. And I want to show you how those vertical defects affect the implant stability value using the Ostell. Yeah. So as you can see, even the number is 60, around average 63, quite a high numbers. However, that number means anything because clinically, as you can see, there's no stability whatsoever. So I ask myself, what is going on over here? Well, this is my simple answer, right? Let me share with you. So as you can see, I adding the Play-Doh on the wine glass, and then just little vertical Play-Doh actually interfering the vibrating. without increased stability, I did not hold my wine glass harder, simply adding some little bit of the Play-Doh, interfering, vibrating, and then it's going to be interfering the frequency. Since the frequency is changed, and then the Ostell RFA value has a false positive one. So that is one thing that I wanted to remember, that bone defect, a pattern, if the influence was the outcome of the stability measuring value. And also this one, I tried to test that the effect of the bone graft on the RFA. So as you can see over here, in clinical situation, we extract the tooth, and then there's a lot of graft, the empty area, and we put some bone graft over here. So here I create those situations. So let me share. So on the cow rib, and then I do the, intentionally I did the over osteotomy, as you can see over here, right? And then I place the implant, and then it was very little, so the torque is almost 0. And then I measure the RFA is 28. So far, low torque value, low RFA, no problem. And I'm putting some bone graft around here, and then clean up, right? And then put the smart pack again, and then measure it. Now you can see it jumped 28 to 48 or 43. So we know that just adding the bone graft is not really significantly increase the actual stability of the implant. However, those wet bone graft stay on the implant surface, they're going to interfering the vibrating of the implant, and also it's going to change the interfering the proper frequency producing, and it ended up the first positive one. So those two things I want to point it out then. Now let's talk about the Periotest. Then what is a damping capacity analysis? Damping capacity analysis is like when you have a target, then once you hit it, if your target is very strong, then the knockback will be very little. So once you hit it, your target is going to come back very quickly. However, if your target is not really strong, once you hit it, it's going to push back and then it's going to come back. So basically, damping capacity analysis is measuring the returning time once you hitting those target areas, right? And then they using the value is a Periotest value, and then the lower the better. Minus is good and the higher number is bad. That's how they set up it, right? However, the problem of those Periotests is rejected by the patient. Let me share those video clips. 6.1. 6.1. So as you can see, to measure the one time, this machine needs to hit the implant 16 times. And also the percussion force is 1.2 Newton. So many patients complained of pain, and then it was quite scary, right? And then if you want to measure the 3 times, then you have to hit the implant like 48 times. It's quite a burden to patient and doctors too. However, this machine, if we control the environment very clearly, right, and then the control very well, then it's a great machine to measure the implant stability, because it actually hitting the implant and it actually measures how those implants move by measuring the time, right? So as a researcher, it has a great value. However, in terms of the clinician and patient, it was rejected. But Neo Biotech about 5 years ago, they revisit those damping capacity analysis. So they upgraded quite a bit. So the percussion force is decreased 30%, and also the percussion time number is 2 to 6 times. If the number is more than 60 IST, then if they hit the 6th time. If it's less than 60, it hit only 2 times. And it also has a built-in protective function. So if the implant is this large, then it's gonna give you the warning sign. So for example, let me share this video clip. 61, 59, 59. So as you can see over here, you can see those red number, that is basically warning, and also the first video clip, you can see that if the number is 59, it hit only 2 times. So what I did is about 2015, I get all those machine and then try to find out what machine is reliable, right? In other words, I try to validate the stability value with the 4 machines as much as possible. So I'm using the torque, and I'm using the resonance frequency analysis, and I'm using the damping capacity analysis, using the Periotest and Anycheck. So this is how I did at the time. So I measured the 4 times, and also Ostell or RFA machine, I measured the buccal lingual medial distal, right? So this is actually what I did, right? So the answer is, for make it briefly, then I can explain to you that I try to find out the correlation between Ostell ISQ and then insertion torque. But unfortunately, there is no strong correlations, right? However, what I found is this. What I found is if the insertion torque is more than 15 Newton centimeter, then 96% of all those samples has a more than 60 ISQ. And also, if the sample has a more than 60 ISQ, then 83% of those implant has a 15 Newton centimeter insertion torque. So, easy way, if I have a Ostell, the samples, and then I have a torque, 15 Newton centimeter, and then when I look at both of them, as you can see, torque has a more common area. So when I compare those two, and if I need to pick up only one machine, then using the Ostell is more. Hold on, okay, hold on. Sorry about that. All right. All right. Now let me move on. So now let me show that the Periotest value and the insertion torque, the relation those two, right? And then again, there's a very little correlation. However, 91% and then also 96% of the threshold area. So on a simple way, as you can see over here, Periotest value, those sample, if that is less than 5 PTV, and then torque is more than 15 Newton centimeter. As you can see, Periotest is a more common area. Of course, this data is based on the in vitro, not clinical data. Now let's look at the Anycheck and the insertion torque data, right? It has a little bit higher correlation, and also it shows that 94% of all sample greater than 15 Newton centimeter has a 60 IST. So in other words, as you can see over here, Anycheck and torque more than 15 Newton centimeter is very close to each other, right? So overall, with those 4 different machines, I wish I can find out the one machine that's going to satisfy those common areas. However, no single golden device to satisfy all those ones. However, what I found is if I'm using the 2 value at the same time, then I can increase the validity significantly. So for example, I'm using the minimum threshold theory, and then if my sample is at 15 Newton centimeter insertion torque, and then 60 IST Anycheck value, and then if my sample satisfy those 2 conditions, and then the minimum of insertion torque is 18, average is 44 Newton centimeters, and then average ISQ is 75, and then Periotest is 0.5, Anycheck is 68. The bottom line is, if we combine those 2 values at the same time, it was much safer. But the most important one is, I can tell you, is that the insertion torque, right? So again, implant mobility and stability, those lateral movement and all those mobility-wise, and then Anycheck, what the other machine can measure those lateral mobility. However, the torque itself cannot be measured. That is very important for us to remember it. Not only the Anycheck, but also this one give you again the graph between the correlation between the insertion torque and Ostell. So over here, as you can see, let's say your Ostell value is about 55, right? 55 over here, but the insertion torque value can be 5, 10, or even 15 over here, as you can see. So clearly, it's going to tell you that Ostell will not tell you that the torque value, there's no correlation, right? How about the Periotest too, right? In here, in the Periotest value is, let's say you have about 7 over here, That's a quite good value. However, your insertion torque is over here can be 7 or 6 or can be about 15. So again, Periotest also showing that even though you have a high Periotest value, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have a high torque, right? So let me share my simple video clip for our understanding. Okay, I play the screw on the plate, right, with my bare hand. I make the hole and then I put the screw with my bare hand. As you can see, there is no driver. It's going to be less than maybe 10 Newton centimeter, but I do my best, right? And then with my bare hand, I bring back torque as much as possible. Then I'm measuring that the implant stability with the Anycheck. Now, this machine basically measures the lateral stability, lateral movement. As you can see, those screw is not moving. That's why it has a quite high value of the 67 IST. That means this implant is not moving laterally, right? It can tell you. And also at the same time, high torque does not necessarily guarantee high lateral stability. So it is very important for us to understand that measuring stability, we have to measure the two things. First one is torque, and the other one is lateral or vertical stability. In other words, mobility over here, right? Keep in mind, right? So suggested minimum value requirement for the immediate loading, if you're using the Anycheck, then I recommend minimum about 20 to 30 Newton centimeter and then Anycheck minimum is 60 and 65 IST. Then why I make those range 60 and 65, right? That means when you do measure the lateral movement, lateral mobility of those implants, it depends on the location of the implant. If you place the implant in the lateral area, maxillary lateral, the bone itself is flexible over there. So when you measure the lateral mobility, actually whole bone can give you a little bit of the false negative one. That's why depend on where you're going to measure, you're going to change your minimum value a little bit. Right? Then keep in mind, it is end, right? So you have to have an implant that has a more than 20 Newton centimeter insertion torque and Anycheck value is more than 60 IST, then I can say that was a quite minimum requirement for the immediate loading, right? How about the conventional loading? You didn't place the implant, somebody else placed the implant and then you saw this patient, but you're not so sure whether this implant is ready or not. In that case, I strongly recommend you to using the reverse torque, right? Reverse torque, I want you to apply 15 Newton centimeter, no more than that, okay, no less than that. You apply the 15 Newton centimeter and then see if it's moving or not, right? You may worry about applying the reverse torque and then you're going to compromise those implants. However, 15 Newton centimeter is not really high numbers, right? If after 3 or 4 months later, your implant is moved back or reverse torque with a 15 Newton, that means something wrong with that implant. You don't want to put any crown on top of it. So apply those reverse torque is 15 Newton, make sure your fixture is not moving, and then you can use Anycheck and measure those IST value. If that is more than 60, then I can say that is quite stable, and then you can move on over here. So keep in mind, this is end. So overall, let's look at this time in the market, there's available Anycheck, Ostell, Periotest, and torque wrenches. When we look at the torque, Anycheck cannot measure it, Ostell cannot measure it, Periotest cannot measure it. You have to measure the torque separately with your torque wrenches. In terms of lateral mobility, Anycheck can measure it, Ostell cannot measure it, Periotest measure it, torque cannot measure it. Bone graft effect, once you place the bone graft, Anycheck will not be affected. However, Ostell going to have a false positive one. Periotest no effect, torque wrenches no effect. Patient comfort, Anycheck is acceptable. It's not, patient will not be really happy. However, it's acceptable. But when we look at the Ostell, if you look at think about the procedures, patient come to your clinic, you have to remove the healing abutment and then put the smart pack and then measure it and remove the smart pack and then put the healing abutment back, right? It is quite a burden and then patient doesn't like it. And Periotest, as I told you before, it is terrible, patient hate it, and torque wrench is acceptable. How about the extra cost? Anycheck, since you measure the stability using existing healing abutment, you don't have to pay anything. However, Ostell in each patient, you have to buy and then place the smart pack, right? And then Periotest and then talk has no money needed. In terms of doctor's convenience, excellent Anycheck is quite easy because you're just holding and pushing it only the 2 times or 6 times. But Ostell, as I told you before, changing those healing abutment and smart pack is a big issue. Periotest is a really big issue. Torque wrench is acceptable. If I look at all those 4 the aspect, and then if you want to buy a implant stability measuring device, and then I strongly recommend we have enough reason why you wanna choose Anycheck. But more important thing is this, my take-home message is torque, right? Without the torque, right, the lateral stability is not meaningful. Without the lateral, the stability numbers, the torque itself is not also meaningful. So both need to go together, right? That is my take-home message. Now, let me give you some suggested insertion torque. If you're doing the 2-stage, so in other words, you're going to do the primary closure, then your minimum torque going to be 5 Newton centimeters. Yeah, that is totally depend on your clinical preference, but less than 5 Newton centimeter, really bad. About 10 Newton centimeter, you can try. But if you're doing the 1-stage implant, that means you're going to put the healing abutment right after surgery, then your minimum, the torque should be 15 Newton centimeters, right? And also the most important thing that I want to point out is please place the healing abutment as short as possible. So I recommend about 2 millimeter above the gingival line is what you want. Do not put 5 or 6 millimeter above the gingival line. If you have a high profile of the healing abutment, patient begin to touch with their tongue, and many times they chew. Maybe some of you already experienced that patient chew the food very well with their healing abutment, right? And also one thing that is occlusion. Again, if you have, let's say patient has no posterior tooth, but you have only 1 molar that you put implant and you put that maxillary first molar with a healing abutment, then definitely patient gonna chew on that side. So please be careful, right? So in terms of the occlusion, whether your healing abutment gonna be used for the chewing or not, that is something you have to be very careful. In terms of the immediate loading case, and then my recommendation is minimum is 20 Newton centimeter and other stability values, right? So 20 Newton centimeter plus Anycheck, that is about 60 IST or 65 IST. Also, you can use ISQ value 60, 65 ISQ, that is also okay. And then also after the healing period, right? Then what I recommend again, using the reverse torque 15 Newton centimeter test, right? So apply the 15 Newton. However, some of my friends apply the 15 Newton centimeter reverse torque quite a long time. Don't do that. Just apply a little bit and then make sure that it's not moving, right? You don't want to hold, keep applying those 15 Newton reverse torque for a long time, right? And then one thing that I want to point out is avoid the pre-tapping with the fixture. It means many doctors, many of my friends, when they place the implant, once they experience high torque, and then they put the implant, go back, and then apply the counter torque, turning back 2 or 3 times, back and forth, back and forth. And then also, and then they claim that they did the tapping of those bones. So eventually their final torque, insertion torque is about 40 Newton, right? Even though they start about 70 Newton centimeters, right? That, I call that is a fixture tapping, but actually that is not tapping. Tapping means that you cut the bone and then you create the space. However, if you do the back and forth with your fixture, then basically you temporarily expand the bone, right? Once your bone is expanded, then once you place the implant, our bone go back to the normal dimension, and then all those compression going to be again on the implants, the bone surface, and then your bone have a higher chance to get some compression necrosis or rapid bone remodeling. So again, do not use your fixture for the tapping. If you experience a high torque, then remove that the fixture and then do the tapping or proper osteotomy is done and then place the implant. That is one thing that I want to point out. And then some consideration for the resonant frequency analysis value evaluation. First, as I told you before, vertical defect of the bone pattern. If you have those vertical buccal wall is gone, right, very low, no stability positive, it's gonna give you first positive. And then if you put some bone graft, if you need to put some bone graft, and make sure you measure the RFA value before the bone graft. After the bone graft, the number gonna be changed. And also because of the RFA value can be changed, influenced by the bone defect pattern. So to have a definitive stability evaluation, I recommend to using the CBC study. So make sure there is no vertical bony defect, and you are on the good shape. And also I highly recommend for this machine for the long-term pattern study. In other words, if you measure the Ostell machine each month, right, then it's going to, and then you have like 6 months or 5 months series of the value, it is a great number and then great data for you to see how your implant osseoaggregation and the osseointegration and stability is changed. So you can appreciate the pattern. However, without those timeline, just a one-time snapshot, that you measure those implants, it gives you 65 on that time without knowing the history, then that value is quite unreliable, keep in mind, because of the possible bony defect, right? Pretty much this is what I prepared for you guys. And then let me look at what we have as your questions. Okay. So the first question is this: can we check torque 15 Newton centimeter when we unscrew healing, or do we have to put torque wrench directly on the implant, right? So when we apply the reverse torque on the healing abutment, then usually healing abutment is unscrewed, right? Before you reach the 15 Newton centimeters, right? So in that case, you cannot measure it. However, you apply the 20 Newton, 30 Newton, then it unscrewed, then you know that your implant has more than 15 Newton centimeter reverse torque. But bottom line is this: in this case, to measure the reverse torque, anyway, you need to get the impression copy and all those others. So I want you to remove the healing abutment and then put the driver back and then apply the 15 Newton centimeters, right? And then check those reverse torque, right? That's a better way and the more safe way, right? Okay, so then we have any other question regarding those stability?
I guess Dr. Park,
So
you
you
already answered all the questions.
Sure.
I think you already answered all the questions. And now I think we already answered all the questions. And if you have any additional questions, you can also email to Dr. Park if you have any further questions. And thank you very much, Dr. Park, for your presentation. And I want to move on to announcements.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Park, again. So if you are interested in taking our webinars, you can find upcoming webinars in our website at www.neobiotechusa.com and simply click on this webinar at the top, then you'll be on our webinar page. And starting on May, we will have 2 webinars every Monday and Thursday. So total, we have 4 webinars weekly. And the time is 1 in the morning from 11 to 12. And 1 in the afternoon from 2 to 3 p.m. Pacific Coast time. And just want to mention that all these courses are first come, first served basis. So please register in advance and reserve your spot. And we also have a great lecture coming up next week on Monday with Dr. Kent Huang on sinus lift at 2 p.m. and also with Dr. Lara on implant complication and failure. And on Thursday, at 11 a.m. with Dr. Owen Trin on anterior implant, and lastly on May 14 with Dr. Jeffrey Platt on advanced bone grafting. So we also have more webinars coming up. We also added on our website. So so the first one is on May 18 with Dr. Kent Wang for it's the basic implant dentistry part 1, and then the part 2 will be on May 21st. And the next one is with Dr. Mark Chen on fundamental of ridge splitting on Monday, May 18 at 11. And then the next one is on Thursday, May 21st with Dr. Owen Trin on All on X, and also with Dr. Dennis Smiler on May 25th on part 1. It's on planning and surgery for extramaxillary zygomatic, and then the part 2 will be on May 28th. And lastly, on May 28th, a Thursday, on topic of fundamental of bridge augmentation with GBR with Dr. Mike Chen. So please check out our webinar page and please register. And now you can watch our previous webinars on our website. Just click on, there's a previous webinar at the top, and you are feel free to watch our webinars here in our website. Here's our website. And thank you very much for those who stay until the end. And as part of our ongoing effort to provide better continuing education courses, we would like to need your feedback. So one of our sales rep will email you this link to complete. And this form should no longer take that 5 minutes. It's very easy. And the form should look like this. And there's more questions. So please, once you receive it, submit it as soon as possible, because we will provide C upon completion of this course evaluation. And here is the, it's good for today. So I really want to thank you for those who stayed until the end and rejoined, those of you also rejoined for second webinar. And we truly appreciate your time. And I think it is a good time for gaining some knowledge and get educated during this time. So if you're interested, you can find this Anycheck on our website. And here it is the promo code. So the promo code for this one is the Park 0507. This is the promo code. And if you see on this one, if you know your sales rep, please write his or her name. If you don't know, you can just skip to it. And I want to say thank you again for participating in today's webinar, and we hope to see you again next time. And feel free to contact me if you have any further questions. Here's my email, ayong.chui@neobiotechusa.com. And I truly appreciate your time. And thank you, Dr. Park, again for your time as well. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your presentation.
I thank everybody, and I wish everybody stay healthy and then happy. Okay, see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. And I also hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you. Bye-bye.